So this video is for the people who are maybe interested in Portuguese culture, and it's a very different video and very different tone from my channel. But there is this poet that I really like, and I always tell my friends about it, about this poet. So Fernando Pessoa is this guy here that is very, very important in Portuguese culture, and his picture, it was even in the Portuguese passport, but not just one picture, but several of them, because he had different personalities, different aliases, and all aliases write in a different style. So this poet's name is called Fernando Pessoa, but the alias that we are reading now will be Alberto Caeiro. This will be the alias. And I think the idea of this poem is so powerful and so nice. So the poem is called Quando vier Primavera, which means when spring comes, or when spring arrives. But I think when spring comes sounds a bit nicer. I also have available some other translations here. They all are slightly different, but I'll do my own translation and then kind of compare translations. So when spring comes, if I'm already dead, so this one is quite straightforward. This poet, he writes without rhyming patterns. So this is very nice poetry to be translated because there is no rhyming pattern. He writes 3 verses. When spring comes, if I'm already dead, flowers will bloom in the same way. It's already super powerful idea. In the first 3 verses, we already have like a statement which is like, if I'm dead, flowers will bloom the same way. Everything will be the same. And this idea is the idea of the poem. And then he, of course, develops this idea. And he continues and he says, and the trees will not be less green than last spring. E as árvores não serão menos verdes que a primavera passada. Then he writes, reality doesn't need me. Doesn't need me. A realidade não precisa de mim. Reality doesn't need me. So by reality you can understand the world. For example, the world doesn't need him. But reality is a better word because reality is what exists, is what is real, like the flowers and the trees, which was this guy likes to talk about. So it's like flowers and trees, no matter if you're dead or not, will always be the same. And now here comes the kicker. Now he's really going home with this line. I feel enormous joy. Sinto uma alegria enorme. I feel enormous joy to think that my death has no importance. So basically he's already saying his death doesn't matter. His life kind of doesn't matter because the reality is the same. Flowers are the same, trees are the same. If I knew I would die after tomorrow, se soubesse que amanhã morria, if I knew I would die after tomorrow, and e a primavera and spring would be after tomorrow. So this has a lot of the conditional. So I think this poem is very good for you to practice your conditional because it's se soubesse, if I knew, and then e a primavera era would be, and or actually e a primavera era it would not be would be was after tomorrow. But actually we use the conditional in Portuguese to talk also about the future because it's like in a hypothetical way. So even though we use the past, a primavera era, it means spring was, in this case it's more appropriate to say in English would be because he's talking about after tomorrow. But because it's hypothetical in Portuguese, sometimes we use the past tense. So this is like was, but we use kind of would be, right? If I knew I would die after tomorrow and spring would be after tomorrow, I would die happy because it would be after tomorrow. Because it would be after tomorrow. And by it means the spring, of course, because it means spring. But it just doesn't want to repeat again the same word, spring. I would die happy. Again, the conditional, morreria. I would die. I would die happy Porque ela era depois da manhã. Because it would be after tomorrow. It the spring. Very, very nice. You would die happy because spring would always come. So is that wouldn't change the fact that spring would come. So that's why you would die happy. And then he continues. If that's its time, by it means the spring, is still talking about the spring. If that's its time, the time of the spring, when would she come if not in her time? When would it come? Maybe when would it come if not in its time? In this case, the subject in Portuguese, it's not written. Se esse é o seu tempo, quando havia ela de vir, se não no seu tempo. It's like in Portuguese you don't have to say the subject all the time. It's implied in the sentence that we are talking about the spring. And spring in Portuguese it's female. So that's why I would translate it like as a her, but it doesn't really matter if you say if that's its time when it need to come, if not in its time. But because spring is female, that's why first I was putting it as using she. Because in Portuguese everything is masculine or feminine. And spring in this case it ends with an A, so it's feminine. Primavera. Primavera it's feminine. If that's its time, when will it come if not in its time? And then he continues, I like that everything is real and everything is right. Or correct. Like certo. Like certo it means right. Could also mean correct. Gosto porque assim seria mesmo se não gostasse. And I like it because it would be that way. It would be that, and way is kind of implied. It would be that even if I didn't like. So, if I die now, I die happy. He repeats his idea. I already said this. That if you would die now, he would die happy. Because, porque tudo é real, isto tudo está certo. Because everything is real and everything is right. So this is very, very powerful idea. So basically, it's instead of a person angry about that, asking why is that is coming, or denying reality, basically denying that is like denying reality, is like, no, I would die happy because everything is real, everything is right. So that's how it is. It's like you die, trees will be the same, flowers will be the same, and the spring will still come. And like he says, very beautiful line in the beginning, and the trees will not be less green than last spring, even if you die. You know, so I think this poem, this idea is absolutely life-changing. Once you understand the idea of this poem. And now he says, you can pray Latin, or you can pray in Latin, I would say. It sounds a bit more correct. You can pray in Latin, or you can pray in, you can pray Latin. You can pray in Latin over my coffin, if you wish. Podem rezar latim sobre o meu caixão se quiserem. You can pray Latin over my coffin, if you wish, or if you so wish. Se quiserem, if you want. If you so wish or if you want is the same idea. And why Latin? Because in Portuguese in the old days you would say Latin words during a burial ceremony. Nowadays we do it of course in Portuguese. If you want, you can dance and sing around it. It means the coffin. A roda dele is it, around it. A roda dele, around it, and it is the coffin. You can dance and sing around it. Não tenho preferências por quando já não puder ter preferências. I have no preferences for when I cannot have preferences. So basically is implying in the future I will have no choice. I will have no will because I'll be dead. Okay, so I'll be dead. So why would I prefer this over that? So he says I have no preference. I have no wishes for the times where I cannot have wishes. So he's basically saying, once I'm dead, I cannot have wishes, so why would I have wishes for the time when I cannot have wishes? It's basically accepting the destiny. It's like, why are you wishing something for a time where you cannot wish for something? Such a nice idea. And the last sentence, I think, is the most hard to translate. I found like 3 or 4 different translations. And it goes like this. O que for, quando for, é que será o que é. Even Portuguese people will have a hard time understanding this last sentence. O que for is what is or what will be. O que for, what will be, I would say. What will be, when will be. It is what it will be. This is like an optional one. É que será o que é. It is what it will be. So things will be what they will be. It sounds like you're saying something very obvious, but it might be surprised that for some people this is not so obvious. It's basically saying something. It is like what will be when it will be. It is what will be. I have other translations that I found in the internet. The last sentence in this translation, it says, whatever will be, when it shall be, will be what it is. Another translation says, what comes, when it comes, will be what it is. Kind of another possible translation of this. You can kind of pick which one is your favorite. And this one has another one. It says, whatever, whenever, that is what it is. This one I don't really like, whatever, because o que for is what will be. So it's talking about the future. And whatever, I don't know if it implies the future that much. So I'm not so sure about this one. So now I'll read the whole poem in Portuguese for you to enjoy, with some background music, I think. Quando vier a primavera, se eu já estiver morto, as flores florirão da mesma maneira, e as árvores não serão menos verdes que na primavera passada. A realidade não precisa de mim. Sinto uma alegria enorme ao pensar que a minha morte não tem importância nenhuma. Se soubesse que amanhã morria, e a primavera era depois de amanhã, morreria contente, porque ela era depois de amanhã. Se esse é o seu tempo, quando havia ela de vir, se não no seu tempo? Gosto que tudo seja real e que tudo esteja certo. E gosto porque assim seria mesmo que eu não gostasse. Por isso, se morrer agora, morro contente, porque tudo é real e tudo está certo. Podem rezar latim sobre o meu caixão se quiserem. Se quiserem, podem dançar e cantar à roda dele. Não tenho preferências para quando já não puder ter preferências. O que for, quando for, é que será o que é.